The challenges facing our teens today mean that more than ever, we need to be there to support them and encourage them. The DrStem Show is here to provide discussions about topics that will help promote healthy relationships, self-image, and success for teens, parents, and the community. Our young people can achieve more in life than they ever dreamed possible. The DrStem Show, hosted by Dr. Stem Malatini, will foster these discussions and encourage your participation.
Once upon a time, it was fairly easy for teachers to build connection with their students. Then the teachers felt as long as they built those connections, it would be easier for the students to master the material they were taught. Today, students are asking their teachers, how can you teach me if you cannot reach me?
Welcome to the DrStem Show. Today we are going to answer that question and more questions that you might have as a teacher, how to reach the students that you teach. That is based on our brand new book, Respect, that we co-authored with Dr. John Lowblack, who's coming to us from the Tampa, Florida area. But guess what? He's actually not originally from Tampa. So I'm gonna have Dr. Lowblack tell us a little bit about his background. Welcome to the DrStem Show, Dr. Lowblack.
Thank you so much for the invitation. About my background, 20 years ago when I decided to leave the Emerald Isle of the Eastern Caribbean, Dominica, I moved to Wichita Falls, Texas, primarily for education. I attended Midwestern State University. And the Dominica I'm referring to is absolutely not the Dominican Republic. In fact, Dominica is the only island in the Eastern Caribbean that we believe that Christopher Columbus would still recognize if he was to come back today. But more about Wichita Falls. There I pursued an undergraduate degree in sociology and criminal justice. My goal was to have graduated in 3 years, and I did that. Then I moved on to Texas State University in San Marcos, Texas. I did a master's degree in human resource management, and then a doctoral degree from Nova Southeastern University in organizational leadership. But outside of those degrees, the graduate diploma that I'm most proud of is the one that I received from the School of Hard Knocks.
The School of Hard Knocks. Wow, what is that?
The School of Hard Knocks is the school that one is thrust into after one completes his or her formal education. The experiences that one gains through the many lessons, the trials, tribulations, ups and downs in life. There is no better education that one can receive but from the day-to-day experiences, from the lessons of life.
The School of Hard Knocks. I wonder if we can have a program that called the Hard Knocks syllabi, where people can learn about life.
Well, in fact, when you think of our parents,
Yeah.
Our parents did not receive the kind of formal education that we enjoyed.
That's true.
But they were able to nurture us, to develop an appreciation for formal education. And were it not for the experiences that they gained from the School of Hard Knocks, from life experiences, they would not have been able to do the kind of job that they did.
Yes. Going back to the intro that you gave us, that a while back, teachers were able to reach the students that they teach. And today, it's more of a challenge than anything. What I like about having you here today is not only are you a teacher at heart, you taught in schools, and you were also a professor in the university, which you're still teaching part-time at the university. Tell us what the difference is today and then when they could do that.
Well, back then, way back then, when I was a little kid, I was convinced that the teachers taught because they loved teaching, they loved children, and the system then afforded them the opportunity to use their expertise, to use the knowledge they themselves acquired from the Street of Hard Knocks, to be themselves. And therefore, they were able to spend more time one-on-one connecting with the students. Today, it's more about testing. It's more about, I think, the quantity of information that we can dump for want of a better word, on the students, as against ensuring that the information that we share with them, that there is a high level of comprehension.
Yes.
Because no one can build a house from top down. A house must be built from the bottom up, the foundation. And it behooves me, it challenges me, sometimes frustrates me and puzzles me why we would just keep moving and moving and moving without ensuring that the foundation is solid enough to keep adding and keep adding and keep adding. So I think the emphasis on testing has pulled or forced the teachers to pull back or step back a little bit and focus more on the job. So teaching is now a job, another day, another dollar.
Which is a disadvantage, I think, a disservice to the children, I think, because then they are the ones that miss out on finding the real you with the teacher. How important is it for a teacher to be the real, to be themselves in every class that they teach?
Well, I think it's very important. The students would love to know that the person who is standing in front of them Monday to Friday is as authentic as they get.
Yes.
Or as authentic as they can be. It's not the teacher's fault. So I would hate for anyone who's viewing this program to walk away with the conclusion that we are dumping stuff on the teacher. The teachers are working within a system, and the system tells or dictates to the teachers what they should do. Yes, to some extent, the teachers are responsible for how they do what they do. But in a number of cases, they have very little discretion, if you will. The system tells you this is what you need to do, this is where you're supposed to be by X time. And those teachers who, for whatever reason, fell behind or are fallen behind are oftentimes chastised and reprimanded for doing everything they can to ensure that the majority of their students get it and understand it before they move on, as against just moving on because they are supposed to be at X place at Y time. Yeah. And if you were to ask the employers today, they would share with you the level of dissatisfaction of the caliber of employees they have, who they graduate, who come straight out of high school.
And did you notice that some kids are not even taking? I hear you saying you wanted to finish yours in 3 years at some point, a degree. 4 years is supposed to be the time that you finish high school, and most of these kids are finishing in 5-6 years.
And sometimes more. And it's not so much that those who finish. The important thing. Let's step back a minute. Okay. They finish.
Yeah.
There are a number of them who start and never finish. So kudos to those who finish, even if they've taken a little while longer. But it's not so much so the students. It's a system. The students spend 12 years in a public school setting. When they reach 12th grade, they do not have a clue what they want to do. So they end up going to college because their mom or their dad said, you must go to college. Well, what am I going to do? They don't have a clue. So they start pursuing one major and they realize, that's not what I want to do. So after 1 year, they switch their major. So every time you switch your major, if your courses do not easily transfer to that new major, you're going to have to spend more time. So we as a system, we must ask ourselves, what is the purpose of education? If it's the purpose of education is to provide people with information to help them make the best possible contribution to themselves and the wider society, then we need to ask ourselves the next question. How can we best do that? And if how can we best do that tells us that how we're doing it now is incorrect, we need to start taking the necessary baby steps to ensure that after a couple of years, we will be where we should be, and students, when they graduate high school, they'll have a clearer picture as to the direction that they want to go. Because, it amazes me that you would spend 12 years in an institution and you graduate in high school and you don't have a clue.
It's becoming even more prevalent. Today we are having a great discussion, I would call it, with Dr. John Loblack, who's coming to talk to us about how to reach the students that you teach based on our brand new book, Respect. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. I'm going to start this segment by reading a quote, which I put up as a quote of the day. Life is the most difficult exam. Many people fail because they try to copy others, not realizing that everyone has a different question paper. When you hear that quote, what comes to mind?
That's the life that I live. That's the life I've been living for the longest while, and that's the life or the message I've been trying to get the average student to appreciate. When you look in the mirror, who do you see? Do you see yourself or do you see someone else? And if you see a reflection of yourself, the only person you should focus on is that reflection that you see in the mirror. What someone else does, someone else does. No matter what it is, no matter who it is, whether it's your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, the end result is each one of us is responsible for ourselves. We can learn from others, but let us not try to just copy what others do. Let us take what they do and modify it to suit ourselves, because of the 9 billion people who are alive and for the 9 billion who have come and gone, none of them look like you. None of them talk like you. None of them do, and none of them did anything in the way you do it. That means you're the rarest of diamond. Act like it.
Exactly. And you know, that's so important that you say that, because then even if today we're talking to teachers and talking about ideas on how to reach the students that they teach, those students also have to be open to the teachers reaching out to them and to the teachers teaching them something they can take out of that high school, college, or wherever it is that they're studying.
Well, back in the day, if I can answer your question as accurately as I can and as objectively as possible, our parents did a lot of the nurturing. Our parents prepared us for school, so it was easier for the teachers. The teachers also had more authority as it relates to discipline. Our parents also had more authority as it refers to discipline. And discipline does not necessarily mean punishment, but setting us up in such a way that when we get to school, we'll not be only representing John or Dr. STEM, we'll be representing the name that we have, because we always ask ourselves, what would my mother or my father do if they knew that I acted up in school? And I had my share. I did have my share, and that helped shape me into the person that I am. That helped shape me a lot.
Yeah. So then, you know, we get to that discussion of not having two parents or even a parent at home. Some kids are being raised in foster homes, some are with grandparents, and some are with uncles and cousins. So then I think it becomes a struggle on who am I representing, you know, whereas, you know, for you and me, we had our parents there. So we represented our, you know, I thought of them as Latin. Even today, whatever I do, I always think, you know, would I embarrass my parents, or would they be proud that I stood, you know, for what they taught me?
Well, you're more fortunate than I am, or I was. I was raised by a single mother, and everything I know about how to be a man, I learned from a woman, amazing as it is. And every strong person I've had in my life was a woman. My mother first, and two teachers, Josephine Joseph and Emily LeBeouf.
They were female as well.
They took me under their wings, they believed in me, and you can hear I'm getting cherry-eyed.
Yeah.
But they meant a lot to me.
Yeah, and that means a lot for you to share with us, because I'm a counselor, as you know, in the schools, and I have a difficult time trying to reach those young men that are being raised by their mothers, single mothers, and their fathers are not present. They are so angry, they are so mad, that why is it that he doesn't even recognize or realize that I exist, and yet I'm his child? What is wrong with me that he wouldn't come to me and be a role model in my life, visiting, or even just calling or writing a note? So to see you being a success and done the things that you have done with a single mother and not your father being present gives us hope and encourages those young men.
Well, I think, well, I've heard that a number of times, that you did it, I did it, so you can do it too. We have to remember that we're all coming from a different place. We're all starting at a different time. So yes, one person succeeded. It stands to reason that maybe someone else can learn from that person and apply the lessons to his or her life. But let us not make a blanket statement that because Dr. Loblack did it, it's automatic that Dr. STEM can do it. We come from different places. What we have to try to do is to get those young men and young women to ask a different question. Not why my father did this, but how can I start from where I am and still make something of myself in spite of the absence of my father? Yes, I would have loved for my father to be there, but you know what? He's not. And we have to find a way to get them to understand that let us deal with what we have. And I know there's it might sound like a cliche, if life gives you lemons, make lemonade. But this is where we are. What can we do to get to where we want to go with what we have? And if we can find a way to ask ourselves the right questions, I think we'll get the right answers. But from the moment you start asking why, life will give you a million answers to justify why. If you ask, how can I move from where I am? Similarly, life will give you a million answers to push you, to motivate you, to inspire you to go towards that goal that is somewhere inside of you.
Yeah, I use the example of having people that have made it, that went through similar situations, because it's never alike, it's always different, as a lighter to ignite those young men's lights. So I always envision every young man or young person that's out there holding a light, but waiting for a situation, somebody, a moment that they can light their own light and go on into the world and be the person that they create, they want to be, in spite of who else is coming in spite of who lights that candle. So when I see young people like you, I say they are encouraged that, you know what, maybe my light, it might not be a big flame, but that little light that says, Dr. Loblack said he made it. Maybe I can take that first step into my life and start to walk and create that light. And as I move on, more people will come and inflict, my light so that it can shine brighter and brighter. And sometimes it might not.
If I can add something to that, if you don't mind, what we have also to do is to define success or significance on our own terms. So unfortunately, we live in a society that attributes success to material. But if we can define success to the extent where we are able to live to our fullest potential, we are able to maximize the talents that we have, to us, that should be the most important thing, not what someone else defines as success. But it will take the young men and the young women some time to find themselves in an environment or to connect with a teacher, a coach, or a mentor that can instill in them a different definition of success.
Yeah. I know in our book, In Respect, we discussed and wrote in one of the chapters about looking at the students' strengths and maybe building on that. Can you expand on the teachers that we are trying to talk to today on how do I reach these students? Because today it's more of a challenge than anything. When they're working on their strengths, what can they look for and how can they use that?
Well, the first thing we have to do as individuals, as teachers, is to start with ourselves. And unfortunately, when we reflect on the road that we've traveled, we have heard you can't, or you won't, or don't many more times than yes, you can. So the teachers, if they get to know their students as well as they possibly can, it will be easier for the teachers to identify what that spark is and then what they can say or do to ignite, to use your analogy, to ignite that spark, is finding that spark, is treating that student as an individual instead of as a member of a group, is finding a way to see that student as a person first, yes, and then a student.
Yes. I can guarantee you that if we would talk to those two teachers that took Dr. John Loblack, they would tell us that he was not only a jockster in that classroom, but he was probably most likely the loudest student that they had. And guess where he is with that? We're going to talk to him more about that when we come back. We are talking to Dr. John Loblack about respect, reaching the students that you teach. You know I had to go there. When you hear someone who's as confident, that's what he calls himself. Yesterday we were talking as we were preparing this, when I went to see him lecturing in one of his lectures that he does around the world. Actually, he's traveling, and he says, listen, I'm confident and not cocky. So I wanted to just make sure that you understand when you have that student in your class that looks like, sounds like they're cocky, it might be the confidence. How would they realize that?
One of the things I think we can refrain from doing, Dr. Malatini, is attaching labels to student. A student may behave a particular way. Let us not label him as a bad student. Let's just look at whatever he did. If it's inappropriate, then let's call it inappropriate. Because when students consistently hear, you will never make it, you're bad, you're performing below level, and when they consistently hear that, when that's all they eat at the dinner table or in the lunchroom, then it affects their psyche, and then they will give you more of exactly what you say. But let me just piggyback on respect, because you mentioned that the book that we co-authored. Yes. Every time I hear the word respect, I think of Aretha Franklin, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. And I went a little slower because I was a challenge in school for spelling. But the R in respect is for recognition. And what we're asking the teachers to do is to recognize your students as individuals, not as an African American, but as John, as Tony, as Cassandra. Some of the other names they have today, I cannot pronounce them, so I use the names that I grew up with. But see each student as an individual and ask yourself, what can I do to reach Tony? Not what can I do to reach the African American students, because each one of them is different. The E is for expectations. What do you expect from your students? But don't stop there. Also try to learn from the students, what do they expect from you and from the class that you're teaching. The S is to share. Let your students see you as a living, breathing human being, not only as a teacher, because you're more than that. Share your story, your challenges, your tribulations with them, so they'll be able to identify more with you as a person. People connect with people. If you use that as your mantra, it'll be easier for you to reach your students. The other E is enable or empower your students to place a greater emphasis on their education. If you can share with them your experiences and let them understand how far they could go with a sound education, maybe, just maybe, that's the story they've been waiting for. And the C is to communicate as clearly as you possibly can, because 95% of the problems we have in life is as a result of miscommunication. When a student behaves one way because you might belong to a different ethnic group, you might misunderstand the student. So ask the student, this is what I saw. Is that what it means? And the T, build trust. Understand that you will never connect with your students if they don't trust you. But trust, like most things or many things in life, will not come overnight. You have to invest the time. And herein lies respect.
Yes, yes. Well said. And those are the chapters of the book that we just co-authored, and it's called Respect. But you know what? I would be amiss if I don't have us discuss the role of parents, because I think they're putting way too much emphasis on the teachers being the parent and teaching in the school at the same time. Did you experience that when you were teaching in the school? And what can we tell the parents out there as far as them taking the role of parents so that the teachers can just teach?
Did I experience that? I was one of the teachers who was always reluctant to call a parent. But I remember very clearly, there was a time I called a parent for academic reasons, for academic performance or lack thereof. Never got a response. The next day I took the student's cell phone. The parent was there in a minute. So it's a question of value. If parents place a higher value on education and not on material, then the students will understand. If parents do everything that they possibly can to help students understand that When you learn, you will earn. And when you learn, you're learning for you, not for anyone else, because I'm not going to be there every day. So therefore, Johnny, if you want to play basketball, guess what? The first thing that you're going to do before you hit the courts is do the homework. And by the way, there is always homework. Homework the teacher assigned, or homework you assign, or I assign, but you are going to spend a minimum of 30 minutes every day, including Saturday. We're going to go to the library, and Sunday after church, or at Sunday school, but you are going to spend some time doing something academic every day. Is how we use the time we have. Parents need to understand that if they allow their children to spend the time, there's no return. Yeah. But if they invest the time, there's always a return on investment. Yeah. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
And you know, thank you for sharing that. I am still appalled at parents that know that school starts at 7:30. You know, I'm talking about our district here at 20 something in the morning until 2:10. And here you are, the student is text messaging, but who are they text messaging? They're text messaging the parent whilst the student is in class.
No, I understand we cannot go back 20, 30 years, but are there things we can do to make the life of the teacher, for example, easier, to help Johnny and Cassandra and Paula understand that between 7:10 and 3:10 is school. So therefore, you have zero access to the phone. You have access to the phone after, when you from school, after you do whatever homework you're supposed to do. Yeah. Then you have free access. But it starts at home. We can all make the life of the teacher easier. Let school be about learning. If we can find a way to do that one child at a time, yeah, we will get there.
Oh, I could go on and on. I mean, you know, you have students that come in the morning after they have a screaming match with the parent, you know, and I understand that these kids are bad. But then once you do that, that means this kid's attitude is going to be negative from the minute they walk into the classroom. And guess who has to deal with all that plus 30, 40-something kids that they have to deal with?
Well, I never seen a bad kid, though. Once I heard Zig Ziglar said, yeah, could anyone go to the hospital and look at the babies and say, here goes a negative baby, here goes a positive baby? Yeah. No, yeah, the children learn what they live. Yeah. So the way, only after a while, when they reach that age of maturity, then they appreciate the value of choices. But we parents must ask ourselves, am I raising my son or daughter in the best way I can? And when I hear excuses about my mom is not there, my mom is on welfare, well, my mom raised 3 kids on 40 Eastern Caribbean dollars a month. And all 3 of her kids came to America, and each one obtained a master's degree or more.
You know, Dr. Lone Black, we could go on and on and on and on, but what I know for sure is I need you back here so we can talk about goals, so we can talk about the role of dreaming. But you know what? We're out of time. And I just want to thank you for coming and talking to us today so that we could have a discussion about how teachers can be sane and remain sane and also be of impact in the schools.
I will have absolutely no problems coming back on one condition, that you do not intimate that I was a loud student or I was a jokester. In fact, I was very shy. One thing I did very well, though, I skipped school a lot in my early days.
On that note, thank you for watching the DrStem show. Again, we were talking about respect today on how to reach the students that you teach. So we'll meet again next time. And like you said, he's coming back so he can talk to us about his loudness. Thank you again for being the guest today.